Welcome back to another episode of Duker Sports. I am joined as always by my amazing co host, Christian Lunde. And today we are doing the Super Bowl recap. Yesterday, Super Bowl 57, my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, going against Christian's team, the Kansas City Chiefs. And for the most part, it was everything we thought it was going to be. It was a fantastic game. Both teams, I think, really proved the point that they were the top two teams in the National Football League, in my opinion. I don't know how there could be any argument to the contrary. Honestly, one of the most perfectly played games by both teams. Very few mistakes. There were a few mistakes that we'll discuss, but for the most part, very clean game by both teams. Both teams kind of just did what we thought they would do. The top two scoring offenses, well, I guess two of the top three scoring offenses in the league, put up a lot of points, 38-35. I should have researched to see where that ranked among all-time scoring Super Bowls. I just thought of that, but didn't do that. But truly, I think a great game. But I'm going to address what everyone knows I'm going to address right off the bat. Let's just get it out of the way. I'm going to start this off with a quote. Sorry, I've got a lot of notes for this, but I want to start this off with a quote by actually a former Kansas City Chiefs player, Mitchell Schwartz. Let me see if I have this on here. So, obviously, we're going to be referencing the hold at the end of the game. And here's what Mitchell Schwartz had to say on Twitter. He says, "Sucks, the main talking point is going to be officiating. This has been an all-time back-and-forth Super Bowl. Hate to see it affected by a call like that." And I agree with him wholeheartedly for a few reasons. Number one, I hate to say it, but I'm sitting here today, and the one thing that I keep replaying over in my mind is that holding call. It's the one thing that's burned into my memory from this game, and I know that there was a heck of a game played before that call. The game was tied 35 all at that point. That's phenomenal. Big plays by both sides, and great offensive play by both ends for sure. The defenses, I feel like, didn't really capitalize that much. I think that's more to do with the offenses than it had to do with the defenses playing poorly. I agree with Mitchell Schwartz for a few reasons. One, I think it's really sad because I think this is what I'll start off by saying, I guess. I'm trying to organize my thoughts on the run here because I've got a lot. I think I think that the refs ruined, in my opinion, what was on pace to be one of the best Super Bowls of all time. I think it would have been regarded as such had that flag not been thrown. And I think it's sad because I think on both sides, for both teams, this game is going to go down. I think it's hurtful for both the fan bases because for the Chiefs, you just won a Super Bowl. You just won a Super Bowl. And all everyone's talking about was that holding call at the end of the game, and that's it. No one's talking about how great of a game the Chiefs played. I am going to talk about that in a second, but nobody's really talking about that. For the Eagles and for the Eagles fan base, I'll speak on behalf of what I assume every Eagles fan is feeling today, and it's feeling that we were kind of let down, that we got the short end of a stick in the Super Bowl. And I don't think that it was a good call. That's my opinion. For a few reasons. Number one, I think there's no. I agree with Mike Pereira. There's an argument to be made that that was a hold, and I'm not arguing that there was no argument to be made that it was a hold or that it was a horrible miscall in terms of was it or was it not a penalty. However, I think if it was a penalty, I think it was a very ticky-tack foul, kind of like what Christian and I were talking about before the show started. I think it was a very minor infraction if it was one at all. Today, there's that new image going around where here's a different angle showing him obviously pull the jersey. And I don't think that's fair because the image they're showing is actually way before the receiver even crossed the line of scrimmage. He's behind the line of scrimmage in that picture. Last night during the game, the replay, they kept showing it down the field, what they were calling the hold, which if the hold was called on the new image that's surfacing today, it's a better call than what I thought it was last night. That being said, you can see him pull the jersey a little bit, but that image I think is very deceiving because it makes it look like it was egregious. Go back and watch it in real time. It's like a tug and release immediately. He didn't hold him for any amount of time. It was kind of like a tug and release. You can call that, but here's what frustrates me is that throughout the course of that game, I saw many times on both sides far more contact against receivers not get called all night long. And it's frustrating whenever it comes down to a defensive stop that would have resulted probably in a Kansas City field goal that put them up 3, and the Eagles would have got the ball with almost 2 minutes to go and a timeout and would have had a chance to go down and tie the game. I think they do. I don't know that they go get a touchdown. I do think they at least get a field goal and it goes to overtime. Who knows what happens? We could have gone 3 and out. We could have turned the ball over. Anything could have happened. What I'm finding particularly hard to stomach today is just the fact that we'll never know what could have happened because that call was made. And again, I think here's what I've been telling people all day when they've asked me if I thought it was a bad call. I said it wasn't a bad call. It was a horrendous call. And it was a horrendous call because it decided the outcome of a game, and it's a call that they do not make, I feel like, the majority of the time. Even in regular season games, when it comes down to the wire, you don't call a 50-50 hold like that, in my opinion. A very soft hold, if one at all. I really don't think that the picture of him pulling the jersey, that did not affect that play at all. Because by the time that Mahomes looked over there and threw the ball in his direction, it was well after that image ever happened. That's why they kept referencing the wrapping around the waist, and I don't think that was a hold at all because it did not impede the receiver's progress, in my opinion. It did not change his direction in any way. So I think that it was just a bad call all the way around. But yeah, I think it leaves a sour taste in the mouths of Chiefs fans who are just wanting to enjoy the fact that their team got their second Super Bowl in the Mahomes era. And I think the Eagles fans are leaving feeling devastated at the missed opportunity of what could have been. That was the calmest I've ever discussed that play. Christian and I got most of that frustration out before we ever started the show because I was still in my feelings a little bit about it. Now I want to address, I guess, next. Actually, what I want to do is I want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. First and foremost, I don't think Patrick Mahomes deserved the Super Bowl MVP. I think for the first time in NFL history, what they should have done is taken that trophy and given it to the 5 offensive linemen for the Chiefs because they played a phenomenal game. They dominated, in my opinion, in pass protection. Philadelphia Eagles had 70 sacks in the regular season. They were 2 away from tying the all-time record in terms of total sacks between the regular season and the postseason combined. And I would have to go back and look to verify. But I watched every single Eagles game this year, and I don't think there was a single time that the Eagles were held to 0 sacks in a game. But the Kansas City Chiefs did that, and that was the talk going into this Super Bowl, was the biggest mismatch in this Super Bowl was going to be the Eagles pass rush going against the Chiefs offensive line, most specifically the right side of that offensive line. And I thought they gave Mahomes a clean pocket pretty much the entire game. I think he had plenty of time to throw. The Chiefs ran the ball extremely well. I thought they opened up pretty good holes. I just think that they played a nearly flawless game. And it's not something that I think anyone expected to them to play at that level. They truly played their best when it mattered the most, and I think they deserve the MVP. Because I actually think that the Eagles' defense did a pretty good job, honestly, in pass protection against the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes finished the game with only 182 yards passing. Most of Travis Kelce's yards came on the first drive. He had a great first drive. but most of his yards came on that drive. After that, I feel like the Eagles did a much better job, specifically in the second half, of containing him. And yeah, the offensive line to me made the biggest impact. Pacheco played a phenomenal game. He averaged over 5 yards a carry. He had 76 rushing yards and a touchdown. I mentioned in our last show that I did think that the Chiefs running backs were my dark horse candidates. I said Jerick McKinnon because I had a feeling that they would attack the Eagles underneath in the passing game with the running backs. But I said I think it'd either be him or Pacheco for me because the Eagles' run defense finished the season ranked 17th. And I thought that was a weakness in an area that could have been exploited by the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they did a pretty good job. Between the two teams, I definitely think that the more balanced approach came from Kansas City. They had 20 rushes by running backs in this game. Mahomes ran it 6 times, and they threw the ball 27 times. So 27 passes, 26 rushes. That's about as even as it gets. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts threw the ball 38 times. And then rushes by running backs, they only totaled 17 for the whole game. And that's what I was afraid of going into this game, was that the Eagles would get caught up in the moment and they would turn this into a shootout between the two quarterbacks. And I actually think in terms of passing the ball, I think Hurts had a better game. He threw for almost double the yardage of Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes did throw for 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts only threw for 1, but he ran in 3 as well. Jalen Hurts also broke the all-time record for rushing yards in the Super Bowl by a quarterback, and he tied the all-time record for rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl with Terrell Davis. I actually think that Hurts just outplayed Mahomes in this game for the most part. I will say, yeah, I don't know. When I look at this game, the one takeaway where I'm like, where did the Chiefs win this game? Offensive line play. To me, there's no other answer. They truly played phenomenal. The Eagles technically they gave up 2 sacks according to the stat sheet. One of those plays, as Christian and I talked about before the show, was really Mahomes, or I keep mixing him up again. Jalen Hurts running out of bounds on a pass play behind the line of scrimmage. That got counted as a sack. Then he was sacked 1 time for real. And so that's 2 times. And that's still pretty good. But the Chiefs gave up 0 sacks. And I don't even really remember a whole lot of Mahomes having to run for his life. There were a few times. And one of the times that he did, he turned into a huge gain. Javon Hargrave could not keep up with him. It looked like he got tired, honestly, in the middle of the play. Kind of gave up on it, gave up a huge run. Another thing that I want to talk about, actually, and I'm not the biggest Patrick Mahomes fan, but he said something after the Super Bowl that I really appreciated, and I didn't even talk to Christian about this. But I want to read this quote that I saw by him on a Philadelphia Eagles reporter that posted this. And Patrick Mahomes, when talking about Jalen Hurts, had this to say. He said, if there was any doubters left, there shouldn't be now. I mean, the way he stepped on this stage and ran through the ball, whatever it took for his team to win, I mean, that was a special performance. I don't want it to get lost in the loss that they had. I mean, even whenever we got all the momentum in the game and we went up 8 points in the fourth quarter, for him to respond and move his team down the football field and run it himself for a 2-point conversion, it was a special performance by him. And I mean, you make sure you appreciate that when you look back on this game. That's what Patrick Mahomes had to say in regard to Jalen Hurts' performance. I thought that was a really classy move by Patrick Mahomes. I don't necessarily think the Chiefs were all that classy immediately following the game. Travis Kelce went on one of his many spiels that he goes on, and I was not in the mood for any of it last night, I'll be honest with you. May have had a few choice words for him that he could not hear. But I do think that Patrick Mahomes, to say that, I think I don't know. I really appreciate that. And I totally agree. I think that Jalen Hurts played a phenomenal game. And they interviewed Jalen Hurts after the game, and they talked about And this is the other thing. I think the Eagles really took a classy approach after this loss as well. I think multiple times the Eagles had an opportunity to blame this loss on that holding call, and none of them did it. James Bradbury actually said that it was a hold. He said that he was hoping the refs wouldn't call it. Um, Part of me believes that he's just saying that because he doesn't want to take away from the Chiefs moment or to seem petty, and also because I don't think he or I or anyone else would say that the Eagles lost this game solely because of that call. I know that on social media I've mentioned that that call ticked me off and I thought it was a bad call, and I've already mentioned that here. Just because I think it's a bad call doesn't mean I think that's the only reason why the Chiefs won. I think the Chiefs played almost a perfect game, quite frankly, especially on offense. Their defense, I think, gave up several big plays. But I think the coaching staff of Kansas City did a phenomenal job, especially in certain situations in the red zone, especially on offense. That play they kept running where the Eagles were in man defense and they'd set the outside receiver in motion, hike the ball, and he'd immediately run back out to the sideline. The first time it happened, I was like, wow, that was just a great play call. Phenomenal job there. The second time they did it, I was kind of ticked off because I'm like, I saw that coming about as soon as I saw the receiver. They did it on the opposite side of the field that time. As soon as I saw him set in motion, I knew they were gonna do it again because the Eagles are playing the exact same defense, and the Chiefs exploited it for the second time in a row. Also, and Christian, you might remember, I can't think who the receiver was, but there was a play where the receiver went into the flats. It looked like he was going to block and then turn it up into a wheel route, and he was wide open for a huge gain.
That was Juju.
Was it Juju? Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought that was a phenomenal play call. He kind of just got lost in the coverage, I guess. I'm not sure how he got that wide open, but he's wide open. I think it was great play calling on the part of the Kansas City Chiefs. Great offensive line play by them as well. The run defense of the Chiefs did a phenomenal job. The pass defense was all right, I guess. But they held every single Eagles running back to under 4 yards a carry, and two of the three were held up to under 3 yards a carry. I think they did a phenomenal job at shutting down the run, and I think they came out and they did that. I think that was their purpose and their goal in this game. I talked about it in the last show where if this turned into a game in which either team became one-dimensional or both of them did in terms of passing the ball, that it benefited the Kansas City Chiefs. I think everyone knew that. The Eagles come out and struck very quickly, and then the Chiefs answered, and then really they came out and played very aggressively to stop the run. I felt like they left their young receivers out in coverage. I think it burned them a few times on big plays. But ultimately, one, because of Nick Sirianni's love for the passing game, two, because of the lack of running lanes that were offered to us by the Kansas City Chiefs, and three, honestly, it just kind of felt like the rhythm of the game just led to that, honestly. I didn't feel like the Eagles were ever really forcing it. I noticed that they were getting away from the run a little bit, and I mentioned to one of my roommates, I was like, this is exactly what we do not want to do, because I did not want it to come down to a game like this in which both teams had that many possessions. I think the Eagles did a great job of controlling the time of possession, despite not running the ball that effectively. I think all three of the Eagles' top receivers played extremely well. Devontae Smith played an absolutely outstanding game. When he got banged up, A.J. Brown stepped up, took on the monster share of the load, and I think he played extremely well. Dallas Goedert did a great job underneath. One area that I was a little bit worried about going to this game was punting. And a few big plays in this game. There were a few big plays in this game that I think really decided it. And one of the biggest ones for sure was the punt return by Kadarius Toney. The second I saw that punt leave Sipas's foot, I knew the Eagles were in trouble because there's a line drive punt to Kadarius Toney, and that's never a good thing. He returned that thing for 65 yards. Part of that I want to mention, I think, had to do with the footing that was on the field, which that was an absolutely disgraceful field. I don't know what is going on in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs had mentioned a long time ago that this field was not fit for this game, and I didn't really honestly I didn't even think anything about it. Um, but everyone's talking about them painting the field, which turned it into like an ice rink out there. Both teams, it seemed like, were suffering from this all night long. I don't think it was a competitive advantage either way. I think both teams had to deal with it. It'd been interesting to see the game being played in which all the players did have their footing. It could have been a completely different game. Who knows? On that punt return, I think was one of the biggest highlights of the poor field position because if you look, I feel like half the Eagles defenders were on the ground. Part of that was because of blocking by the Chiefs, and part of it was because no one could keep their footing and get over to Kadarius Toney, who was beelining his way to the end zone. Came up, I think, 3 yards short or 5 yards short, actually. But yeah, honestly, phenomenal job by him. Another play that was big was that Mahomes run that I talked about earlier. Uh, I don't know how injured he was. In the first half, he looked like he was kind of banged up. He said he didn't get any shots, pain management shots at halftime. This is one reason why I think, and after the game, they talked about legacy games. And I continue to think that I'm like, I don't know that he's actually as hurt as he puts on because when he needed to run, he ran quite effectively. He got the first down. I don't really care whether or not he was hurt. I don't mean that in a mean way because I don't want anybody to get injured. But I'm just saying it doesn't matter because it was a great run by Mahomes. Unbelievable pocket awareness by him. He honestly faced a lot of pressure on that play. There were multiple opportunities I felt for him to get sacks, but he just kept stepping like perfectly through the pocket, letting his blockers get where they needed to be, and then he just took off. So phenomenal job by him. And other than that, I don't really have any other notes on the game, but I will say it again. I think that when I was watching the game up until the holding call, I think that I would have given that game a 10 out of 10. I had everything you could possibly want. There's a lot of points being put up. Fantastic offenses on both sides of the ball. They were both very efficient. Very clean game. I actually thought the refs got every single call right. I actually have no complaints other than the hold. I think they did a phenomenal job. I was a little surprised by some of the calls in the sense that I didn't think that Devontae Smith catch would be overturned. That being said, I do think the ball moved. So I think it was a good call. I just didn't think it was clear or definitive. I was surprised that the Dallas Goedert catch stood because that was a super close call, but I think it was right. All the people messaging me and telling me that Miles Sanders fumbled the football today, please stop because you obviously do not understand the rules. I'm going to say this in a nice way, but according to the rules, that was not a catch because for it to have been a catch, he would have needed to either take 3 steps or one additional step after he got both of his feet down, or he would have had to make a football move. He did neither of those things. And then the only other thing that they look at really is like the amount of time that he had possession of the ball, and it was pretty quick from the time that he caught the ball to the time he got hit. I know that to the untrained eye, it seems like a fumble. It looks like a fumble, but according to the rules, that is not a fumble. That rule has been in effect for several years now. There's a lot of people saying that it was a fumble. That was not a fumble, but because I saw someone saying that it doesn't matter because the Chiefs should have had an extra touchdown anyways. Absolutely disagree. Now, what was a fumble and that I want to discuss is Jalen Hurts' fumble. My heart really goes out to Jalen Hurts. I think that makes it hurt even more. I have a love for Jalen Hurts. I'm going to be honest. I was one of the guys whenever he got drafted that was ticked off about it. Not because I didn't like him. I actually loved Jalen Hurts in college. I thought he was a fantastic leader. I thought he was a fantastic player. He got drafted by the Eagles at a time where the Eagles were competing for Super Bowls, and Carson Wentz was playing phenomenally well. And I felt like they needed to surround him with more talent and not draft what many people said was an insurance policy in Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts would end up taking over the starting position at the end of that season. He started the final 4 games. He played well, but not great. His second year, he led us to the playoffs. He played well, but not great. But he looked a lot better than his rookie year. And then this year he came in and looked even better, and he led us to a Super Bowl berth, and he played phenomenally well on the biggest possible stage in the biggest moments of his career. And yet, well, first I just want to say, congratulations to him and the amount of work that he puts in. Like, football is this man's life. He gives that team everything he has. In my opinion, I think he's the best leader in football right now. Um, and I think it's because he came into the Eagles organization. That organization was in a full-blown collapse. There was really no primary source of leadership on the team. Doug Peterson, I think, took away a lot of information from that mishap, and he's doing a much better job in Jacksonville. I think he did a phenomenal job coaching this year, but I feel like he put all the blame on Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is not the leader that Jalen Hurts is, in the sense that Carson's more of a quiet player. That's just not something he's comfortable doing. He's not a very vocal person. He kind of just is quiet and is underneath the radar, and he wants his play to speak for itself. And so there were murmurs in the locker room that Jalen Hurts had already assumed leadership of that team before he ever even played his first or started his first game. When Jalen Hurts was asked about being booed on draft night by Eagles fans, he said something, and I was watching the video before the game, and he said, they don't understand now, but they will. And watching it last night, I think everyone should understand why the Eagles drafted him in the first round. His leadership is unbelievable. His work ethic, I honestly, in my mind, I compare it to Michael Jordan. When I look at the way he prepares, his mentality, the way he approaches the game, I feel like he has a killer instinct. He has the it factor that people talk about, and I think he's actually making up for, in some areas, a lack of talent. Not that he doesn't have it. I think he's a truly phenomenal athlete with tons of talent. But I think what puts him ahead of everyone else, in my opinion, is his leadership ability and the way that he mentally prepares to be the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. And it breaks my heart because when asked after the game to give his thoughts on the game, he talked about this game being a learning opportunity for him, and he took full responsibility. And he said that had he not fumbled, that he thinks the Eagles could have won that game, and that it was on him to become better. And honestly, I think that was really the only mistake the Eagles made the whole game. When I look back at it, well, I guess the line drive punt is too. But that play was one of the few mistakes that either team made. But Jalen Hurts did what he does. He assumed responsibility. He took leadership. And Nick Sirianni, there were moments during the game where he maybe did not take the high road. He did flip a bird to the Kansas City Chiefs sideline at one point, and Jalen Hurts, once again, proving his maturity, pulled his coach's hand down. He gave him a smile. There was no need for that. I think Sirianni just is a very emotional person. I think that's why Philadelphia loves him. But after the game, I think Nick Sirianni took the high road. When asked about that call, all he said was, "I do not get paid to make the calls." He did not blame the referees at all. He took the high road. I haven't taken nearly the high road that they have. I was very upset by the call, and again, I think the only reason I'm feeling cheated, I would never say that the Chiefs did not earn this victory. The Kansas City Chiefs, without a doubt, are a top 2 team in the National Football League. Without a doubt, they deserve to be in the Super Bowl, and without a doubt, they played quite arguably their best offensive game of the season in terms of limiting mistakes and playing an efficient style of football. And I talked about it. I talked about it actually on ESPN radio on Friday, what I thought the keys to victory would be for both the teams. I said the key to victory is going to be the same for both. Balanced offensive approach. Whichever team that can establish a ground game and a balanced offensive approach would win this game. I think the team that did that, Kansas City Chiefs. I think the play calling on offense, I don't know if it was Andy Reid or Eric Bieniemy. After the game, Andy Reid did give credit to Eric Bieniemy for some of the play calling. But whoever it was, they did a phenomenal job. I think Kadarius Toney played well. The offensive line played well. Juju Smith-Schuster played well. Pacheco played well. Phenomenal job. And they did give up 35 points on defense, but I never really felt like the Chiefs defense was playing horribly. I thought that they played moderately well. I just think that the Eagles' offense is just that good. But the way that the Chiefs neutralized that pass rush continues to be the main takeaway for me. I've now been talking for 30 minutes to open the show, and I think that's more than enough time for me to get some of those things off my chest. And now I want to hear from Christian Lunday, and I want to start off your segment by saying congratulations.
Thanks. I did a lot of yelling and screaming, so I apologize if my voice isn't up to par. There are no moral victories in football, um, and it sucks. I've been on the losing side. Dylan's been on the losing side. We've both been on the winning side of things. There are no moral victories in football. It doesn't matter the kind words or the good things. It doesn't take away from the sting of losing a game, especially a game like that one. Um, so, hats off to the Eagles organization. They were very classy following the loss. I think outside of Nick Sirianni's antics with the bird, and then also when they were trying to decide if the Devontae Smith catch was a catch or not, and him waving off, saying, come back up here, we that was a catch. Other than that, I think that was a phenomenal effort by them and a great game. And there's not a single player on that team that didn't deserve a victory. They played like champions, and I think they showed you, uh, at least in my opinion, statistically and empirically, the better team actually lost. And I think the Eagles should be very proud of their efforts this year, this season. I think there are a lot of doubters who doubted them to the very end, and I think those doubters were proven wrong, even though they lost the Super Bowl. And Jalen Hurts especially. I was telling Dylan in our pre-show meeting, a sort of unofficial meeting, that Jalen Hurts' story from his collegiate days all the way to now could probably be a movie. He got pulled out of the Alabama National Championship for Tua Tagovailoa, lost his starting job, worked his way back, transferred to Oklahoma, uh, kept Oklahoma viable while also improving as a player. I think Lincoln Riley really started to help him develop more as a passer, and then he gets into the NFL, goes to the Eagles, and like Dylan said and laid out very eloquently, the dysfunction that was happening towards the tail end of the Peterson era and the Carson Wentz debacle, the steady ship was Jalen Hurts. And that takes a lot of maturity and a lot of man in that locker room to deal and weather that storm. So hats off to the Eagles. They're worthy opponent, and I told Dylan before the game, I was like, if the Chiefs lose, it's an honor to lose to Dylan's favorite team. It turned out to be the other way, but I still feel like the Eagles are a heck of an opponent and had a fantastic season. Moving on. I had a Cheffers watch. It turns out, actually, while doing some more research after our previous show, Carl Cheffers actually had a much heavier, I think, bias against the Eagles in totality of his refereeing career. And the Eagles actually had a pretty big losing record when Carl Cheffers ref their games, postseason included, than the Chiefs. So I kept a Carl Cheffers watch, made sure, hey, I'm going to root for Carl when he does good. I'm going to chastise Carl when he does bad, and try to be an unbiased guest moderator there. Just like Dylan said, actually, there were 9 total penalties in the game, 6 to the Eagles, 3 to the Chiefs. All but one of them, really fantastic calls. They were good calls. They were correct calls. One, I said, I've kind of danced around this on Facebook a little bit on social media because I want to get my opinion out here. Was it a bad call, as in incorrect? No, I don't think it was incorrect. Classy, as I told Dylan earlier, classy doesn't mean dishonest. I do think Bradbury was being honest. I think it was a hold. I think he knew he was holding. As a veteran, you can get away with slight things like that. And I think As I'll mention a little bit later, I think earlier in the game he got away with one, and that probably enabled him to think, hey, I'll probably get away with something else, later in the game, especially since we were killing them in the red zone with those two motion plays and cut right back outside. So I do think it was a hold. My issue with it and why I probably wouldn't have made the call, in my opinion, was because Carl Treffer set the standard earlier in the game that those type of ticky tack fouls were not going to be called. I have 8 good calls, 0 bad calls, 1 so-so call, the 1 so-so call being the hold at the end of the game, and I also have 2 bad no calls. And the 2 bad no calls were both things that I think could have been pass interference. The A.J. Brown touchdown catch, Dylan and I both agree. I think it was Juan Thornhill. I think that could have been called a pass interference. I think Juan Thornhill got there early. A.J. Brown is that much of a stud where it doesn't matter. He's just supremely physically gifted and ended up catching the ball in the end zone anyway. But I think that by all the letter of the law, that could have been a pass interference, and we both agreed that it was. The second one is where I think James Bradbury felt enabled to kind of get away with the savvy veteran moves, and it ended up biting him in the butt later on. And that was against Juju Smith-Schuster at the top of the second quarter. It's about 13 minutes and 50 seconds left in the quarter. Juju goes over the middle. James Bradbury tugs his left arm back. That's a pass interference basically every day in the regular season. Cheffers didn't call that. And I thought I added that to the bad no calls. I'm like, that's pass interference. We ended up punting that drive because that play was on third down, so that we lost possession there. But I'm like, okay, you're not going to call that. You don't end up calling the A.J. Brown play, which was later on, I believe. So, they're going to let these boys play if that's the standard. And that's why I think in totality, the call, I think, was bad. Not bad as in incorrect, but bad as in you are unjustly going against the standard that you set earlier in the game. And when you do that, you open yourself up to criticism whenever you change that standard later on in the game, because you're not above reproach at that point anymore. You go against your own standard that you set in the first half, and then everyone's sitting there wondering, like, hey, that every penalty at some point is going to affect the outcome of the game. This one, unfortunately, just happened to be within 2 minutes left in the entire football game. If we get a first down at the goal line, we can easily bleed the clock, just like we did with smart playing by Jerick McKinnon to go down before he scored the touchdown. That really basically negates an entire Eagles possession that a lot of people would have loved to see. Just like Dylan very articulately laid out, a lot of people would have loved to see that. If that penalty doesn't happen, Eagles possibly have a chance to go down and score, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. We just don't know if that would happen or not because we didn't get to see it. And I definitely agree with Mitchell Schwartz and Dylan that that would have been a complete game. Carl Treffers could have pitched a perfect game as far as penalties gone, and we could have seen a very true meritorious outcome. I still think the Chiefs would have won, but that's my opinion. I have no idea. The Eagles were gashing. Jalen Hurts at least was gashing us all night. The dude ran his butt off. So that's what I have to say about the penalty. That's where I would be like, okay, on social media I said it was bad, but I wouldn't have called it. But also it was still a call. Brought those all three of those ideas together. With that being said, here we go. Chiefs outscored Eagles 24-11 in the second half. The O-line allowed 0 sacks all game, which was very, very rare. Basically didn't happen against this vaunted pass rush with the Eagles. I have some apologies to say. One to Andrew Wiley. He thoroughly kicked butt against Hassan Reddick. I do think that with the field conditions, of which I'll get to in a minute, that kind of helped neutralize the pass rush of both teams, but especially the Eagles. And the very first drive came to mind, and it was on second down. I think it was 2nd and 8. The first pass to Travis Kelce, which was an absolute dart by Patrick Mahomes. He steps up in the pocket. You see both ends of the Eagles collapse in and both slip and fall. They both slipped. They both beat Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley. They both slipped and fell. And I'm just like, if the field was a better condition, I don't know that they slip and fall. There's a possibility they get home on that one. But other than that, I said Andrew Wiley wasn't a starting caliber right tackle. I apologize, Andrew. you played a heck of a game and probably made yourself a nice fat paycheck. Orlando Brown played the best game of his career and the most important moment of the season. Um, I think so. It looks like Andrew Wiley played. I think he had 31 pass block snaps. He only allowed one pressure, and he had a 98.3% efficiency rating. That's incredible, especially for a guy that I said wasn't a starting caliber right tackle. The next one was Orlando Brown. He played 32 pass block snaps, two pressures, allowed 96.8% efficiency. This guy, I think it's time to give him his flowers. I thought about it last year, but he was a rookie. Even though he had the highest Pro Football Focus grade out of all the centers, Creed Humphrey is the best center in the NFL. 32 pass block snaps, zero pressures allowed, 100% efficiency rating. He's the best center in football. I think Trey Smith played a good game. I think the totality of our offensive line, fantastic game. Our guards our left guard is better than our right guard, but in totality,
Joe
these
Tooney.
guys, what's that?
Is his name escaping you, Joe Tooney?
His name is escaping me, but yeah, Joe Tooney is better than Trey Smith. But I think in totality, all these guys playing together, this was their finest performance. This just tells you how good Brett Veach. He basically made this entire offensive line from scratch last year, and it's paid dividends. Field was awful. Brought up the play in the first Chiefs possession. Here's how bad this field was. In week 1, did you see how Jake Elliott slipped on his kickoff? That happened exactly to Harrison Butker on week 1. He broke his foot, and he was out for an extended period of time. And it obviously bugged him into the season because he missed some field goals that were his fault outside of holding by Tommy Townsend, which also contributed to missed field goals. Secondly, on that same game, Trent McDuffie caught the turf or the grass. Basically, his cleat got caught. He pulls up, strains his hamstring. He's out. They both missed an extended period of time this regular season to that turf. Everyone, the Chiefs organization, top to bottom, said, "Hey, fix it. It's bad." I'm sitting here. Maybe Kyler Murray isn't actually that injury prone. He's just playing on the worst field in the NFL. So that the Arizona Cardinals organization, Michael Bidwell, they need to work on fixing this. They need to work on fixing this field. Secondly, Patrick Mahomes. I know there's an argument to be made, and I think it's valid that Jalen Hurts could have easily won the Super Bowl MVP despite losing. I think he played a phenomenal game. I'm not quite ready to say that he outplayed Patrick Mahomes, and here's why. As far as passer rating in Super Bowl history goes, Patrick Mahomes had the 7th highest passer rating in Super Bowl history with 131.8. ESPN has their QBR rating. Patrick Mahomes has the highest QBR in Super Bowl history of all time with 96.4. He had one incomplete pass in the entire second half, and that one incomplete pass was a purposeful throwaway in the end zone. I think Jalen Hurts' QBR was only 79.7, not to take away from Jalen Hurts' performance, but Patrick Mahomes probably played the most efficient football game that a quarterback has ever played in the history of the Super Bowl. There's a reason that he only had 182 yards is because he basically didn't play the entire first half. He had maybe like 2 drives. We lost time of possession for the total game of 11 minutes. Most of that came in the first half. So the dude really wasn't on the field. I think that's props to Nick Sirianni and the game plan. They were aggressive. They didn't change who they were. They went for it on 4th downs. Their running game basically churned the clock and burned it and kept Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. If you want to beat the Chiefs, that's a great way to do it. It paid dividends for the Patriots. It almost paid dividends for the Eagles. I watched. So I think in the second half, this is where I think coaching mattered, and I think Nick Sirianni got beat by Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, and I don't think it was close. Eagles got outcoached in the second half, mainly because a lot of people pointed this out. This started from the Doug Peterson game, Jacksonville versus the Eagles. I watched a Kurt Warner video when he has a study ball YouTube show. He pointed out that whenever the safeties are playing deep half zone and all the rest of the secondaries in man, whenever there's anyone in motion or they're passing off anyone during the play, they have a hard time with it. And you saw the Kadarius Toney touchdown reception. He goes inside. Darius Slay takes off and doesn't turn around. And what happens? Kadarius Toney's wide open. I think part of that is coaching. I think Andy Reid and I think Eric Bieniemy saw these holes and decided they were going to exploit them. Um, I'm going to give a huge shout out to the Chiefs linebackers. They played their absolute A game. Willie Gay was on it all night long. Nick Bolton, I think you see why the dude had 180 tackles this year. He destroyed, I think, Leo Chenault, this rookie. There's a play where he just exploded into a hole. It was like a gain of like 1 or 2 yards, or it might have been a loss for like a yard. It was a regular play, but to me, I'm like, this dude flew off the ball, destroyed everyone in his path and made a tackle, and he's a rookie. He's still a rookie. He's barely played that much. He's just really gifted athletically, and they threw him out there, and he made some absolute incredible plays. I think the Chiefs had a physicality in the first half that I don't think was matched by the Eagles until later on. Justin Reed absolutely knocked the socks off Devontae Smith in the first quarter. I was like, that's very close to maybe being an illegal hit, but Devontae was a protected receiver at that point, so it was fine. Um, the You mentioned the Miles Sanders catch, not catch. That wasn't a fumble. Totally agree with you. You're 100% correct. L'Jarius Sneed knocked the crap out of him. I thought that was a huge hit. I think the Chiefs just played with some absolute physicality that I don't think was matched by the Eagles right off the bat. Um, so we go back to the pass interference play. The Chiefs are in white uniforms. This is something that separates Bill Belichick with other coaches, is these little tidbits of information that the guy makes huge decisions off of, and I think pays dividends. And I was listening to some sportscast on YouTube today, and they talked about Rob Ninkovich mentioned that Bill Belichick, anytime someone played with white jerseys, he'd tell his DBs to play with white gloves, because your gloves are the same color as their jerseys. You can probably get away with some pulls, and they're not going to notice because your hands are white and everyone's moving 20 miles an hour. I think Nick Sirianni, being a young coach, doesn't have that experience yet. I think moving forward, Nick Sirianni is going to add that to his tool belt. Um, I want to give a shout out to the Chiefs secondary. We gave up some big plays, but all in all, considering their experience level and how young they are, I think they played phenomenally. I think the offensive line, I think there's a very good case that they could have been the MVP for allowing 0 sacks. I did not expect that prolific of a performance, but I got it, and it was amazing. Travis Kelce burnt Epps in the first drive of the game to tie it 7 points. We talked about Epps on the last episode. We saw it. He got absolutely
That
toasted.
wasn't even the last episode. That was you and I talking on the phone
That's true. Yeah,
that one day. Yeah, and I told you I was like, I don't like
you're
Epps in coverage. He blows coverage often, and I saw it right off the bat.
Yeah, and that was a beautiful throw by Patrick Mahomes and a great catch by Travis Kelce and a great route. I think some other notes, Pacheco. If they're playing too high, you take the Pacheco down. That's my philosophy. You just give the kid the football any way you freaking can. Just give the dude a football. He's a miniature tank out there. He played phenomenally. He just gives you a spark, and we didn't have that type of physicality in the run game for a while. But I think something Brett Veach before the season called his shot with the seventh rounders. He's like, there's so many running backs, 6th or 7th rounders. You're going to see one have 1,000 yards. Well, if you include the playoffs, Pacheco had 1,000 yards, and he's a 7th-round running back. He's going to be a good player for years to come. I think the wide receivers all played. Sky Moore got his first touchdown in the biggest game of his career. Incredible. I think that was the same play, but on the other side of the Kadarius Toney touchdown. Fantastic, same mechanics going on there. So I think the Chiefs wide receivers played great. Juju had a phenomenal game in the second half. He was getting open. Um, I know he was battling through a knee injury. The second half, it just felt like he just said, F it. I'm just going to go out there, ruin my body to win a ring. And I think he did just that. I think to speak more about Jalen Hurts, time of possession, he did have 302 passing yards. The dude was an absolute workhorse. That 2-point conversion, that was a gut punch. I got to tell you that because he got hit 4 times, and the dude squats like 1,000 pounds. Like he squats like 2,000 pounds. Every time I see him squat, it's like another 1,000 pounds. And he just goes through and just burrows all of them and gets into the end zone. I'm like, crap, that's not good. I said an expletive really quietly. My girlfriend's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." That one was a gut punch. I was worried about that. I think the fumble to be honest, with how well the Eagles were playing in the first half, I don't think the fumble is as big a deal. I know we tied it at 14, but the Eagles were doing such a good job keeping us on the sidelines that I just don't think it was that big of an impact. Clearly, in hindsight, it was. If that doesn't happen, the Eagles win. But to me, I'm just like, anytime you dominate us that well with time of possession, it's going to be really hard to come back. But there's this one stat, and it's if the Chiefs go down by 10 points, do you know what happens? And the Chiefs come back. It's the second time in a Super Bowl we're down 10 points and we come back to win. I just think Nick Wright on Fox Sports goes a little bit overboard, and there's like he had like his top quarterback rankings, and like it was Joe Burrow, and then it was Jalen Hurts, and then it was Patrick Mahomes on one leg, Patrick Mahomes, and then Patrick Mahomes when he's down by 10. Is a little overboard, but Patrick Mahomes is one of the best, most clutch quarterbacks in the history of football. I think he's proven that with the amount of comeback victories we've had in the postseason. So now I'm going to go on my last rant before we move on. And that is to all the BS that I had to put up with this offseason. The AFC West spent $500 million trying to beat the Chiefs. All of them dispatched. We had people listing freaking Justin Herbert above Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen above Patrick Mahomes, obviously Joe Burrow above Patrick Mahomes because of the head-to-head victories. I had to listen to that all offseason. I had to listen through, hey, we traded away Tyreek Hill. Mr. Bart Scott, do you think the Chiefs are going to make the playoffs? No, they're not. They're going to be last in their division. Bart Scott, he apologized after the playoffs and picked the Chiefs to win, but sorry, man, the damage was done. You don't get to ride the bandwagon now. And he's not the only one. When the Chiefs played the Bills, I saw David Carr, Derek Carr's brother, put Josh Allen ahead of Patrick Mahomes whenever they did like a split screen of who had the advantage where quarterbacks went to the Bills. I was like, you got to be kidding me. We did lose to the Bills in that game, but I don't think it was on Patrick Mahomes. Then we played the Bengals, same thing. This same BS where it's like, you know what? These guys, the closest one who I think has a legitimate case to be mentioned in the same echelon as Patrick Mahomes is definitely Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. He's beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs when it matters at Arrowhead. That's a big deal. He's the only one with a shred of credibility at this point that deserves to be mentioned among all the young quarterbacks in the same echelon as Patrick Mahomes, at least before this Super Bowl. I had to put up with that BS. I had to put up with it. No one on the Fox panel in the Super Bowl in the morning picked the Chiefs to win. Nate Burleson, I think, was the only one who astonishingly picked the score, the Andy Reid out coaching in the second half, and the Super Bowl MVP going to Patrick Mahomes, which really isn't that much of a it's not really that much of a risk, really. But he's the only one I think on the CBS panel that picked the Chiefs. I saw so many people that picked the Chiefs to finish third in the division, second in division. I saw so many people pick everyone else but the Chiefs. And in an effort to be unbiased, it was really hard to not look like a homer. But it was too much. I'm like, this team is really good, and it was the best offense in all of football this year, and we're not getting our respect. Does that mean nobody picked us? No. You know why? Because I know I picked them. I called into ESPN Radio when Dylan was doing the show in Springfield on the Jock, and I called in, and they're like, hey, who do you want to face in the AFC Championship? And I said the Bengals because I know we can beat them, and I know that we will. We did. We dispatched them. I thought that the 49ers were the best roster in football. I thought they were the best team. I had them on number one on this show. You saw that. Until I saw the Eagles play in the playoffs and thought, oh my gosh, they've dominated on all three levels. They show me something that I don't think the 49ers have yet. I think the Eagles are the best team in football. They destroyed every team they went against. I know the 49ers had a quarterback issues with as far as injuries were concerned, but I think that the Eagles still handled the 49ers really well. And there's an argument to be made. Even if Brock Purdy was healthy, they still don't win. And I think that's a valid argument. And I think the Eagles showed you how talented they were in all three phases of the game with, I think, a hobbled Jalen Hurts that game. And so by all intents and purposes, by almost every statistical metric, the Eagles were the better team than the Chiefs, except in key areas. And that's why I picked the Chiefs to win. And I was wrong about the score. I was right about the very end of the game, but that doesn't matter. What matters is I'm tired of the disrespect. I know there are a lot of annoying Chiefs fans that they're as bad as Cowboys fans. Every year is our year, but the problem is when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, it's going to be the Patriots. It's going to be as long as they have those two guys, I'm not going to pick against them. So I think we're in a good class here as far as Chiefs fans. Do not be Andy Bernard on The Office. You are in the golden days if you're Chiefs fans. You are in it. I'm not letting you go this whole time without realizing that you're in it. You're in it now. You need to enjoy it now before all this is over and we go back to freaking 2005 or 2008 through 2012 Chiefs. I don't want to relive those years. Those were terrible years, and that's very capable of happening without these two gentlemen dealing with our franchise. So, all in all, I agree with Dylan. I think this is a phenomenal Super Bowl. It's disappointing that the holding call at the end kind of takes away the shine from the Chiefs' win, and also just kind of negated an opportunity for the Eagles to try and match our points or supersede them. So, but all in all, overall, it's a great game. I'm excited for the future of both franchises, and I'm excited, obviously, that my team won. But Dylan, it was an honor to play your team. I hope you hold your head much higher than I probably would. But it was an honor playing your team.
Likewise, going against your team. One thing I wanted to address was the people who may be retiring, who played big roles in this game. And one person you just talked about is Andy Reid. There was a report that came out before the game that he would potentially consider retiring after this game was over. I really hope he doesn't.
He ain't.
Yeah, I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. And one reason why I really would love to work with the Kansas City Chiefs after I graduate here in a couple months is because of Andy Reid. I'm also from Missouri, big Midwest guy. Love the city of Kansas City. So I have nothing but respect for the Kansas City Chiefs organization, for the team, and for some of the fans like you. Some of the fans, let's not talk about. But those who have stuck with the Chiefs through thick and thin, those who are realistic, um, with I just feel like it's the same with any fan base. I think it's actually the casual fan who's the most annoying. They talk the most smack and they don't know what they're talking about, and it gets annoying. Um, yeah, there's the Chiefs organization has never done anything, in my opinion, uh, to deter me away from rooting for them. I think that Mahomes and Kelsey get a little bit fired up, and when you're on the losing side of things, it can rub you the wrong way, as I learned last night. But beyond Andy Reid possibly retiring, and again, I hope he doesn't. Jason Kelsey could have been his final game of his illustrious career. Uh, I really hope it's not. He still clearly can play at an elite level. We draft Cam Jurgens due to his expertise. Jason Kelsey handpicked Jurgens to be his replacement. It's actually funny because now I'm going to forget his name. Our left guard, which I don't know why I'm forgetting his name right now. But Jason Kelsey picked him the year before. Landon Dickerson is his name. Just remember it. He was also a center as well that he had picked. And he played so well that they were like, we got to get him on the field in some capacity. So he moved to guard. And then he played such a fantastic role at guard that they said, okay, do it again. He took Jurgens. And if nothing else, hire this man to be an offensive line scout because I love both of those guys. They're phenomenal. And Kelsey picked both of them. So I say keep him around the organization. I do like his quote, and I would have to agree. My feelings exactly were "F you, congratulations." That's what he said to Travis Kelsey. That was kind of how I felt towards Christian.
Yeah, I
Only
was gonna
because
say the same thing.
only because I just happened to see a video of him screaming immediately after the aftermath. But I understand. I wish that I was the one that was feeling that last night. I don't. We handle our emotions a little bit differently. Um, I think that you can be more expressive at times, and I definitely mine would be more of like I'd be sharing all the big moments from the game of the Eagles winning. I would say, I would do the same thing you did and be like, to all the doubters, shut up, know your role. Um, I still think that if it, like that's what frustrates me is as an Eagles fan to hear people. And I'm very thankful that I've not had to hear it yet. That the Eagles didn't belong there. I think that is the most absurd storyline I've ever heard in my entire life. The Eagles disrespected at every turn this season, and we may have lost the game, but it was a hell of a game, and it was so closely contested. So I think that you have to leave with your heads held high, at least in a metaphorical sense. But as you said, there are no moral victories. Unfortunately, only one team can win it every year. Uh, I got called by a friend of mine, Kim Turk, immediately after the game, and I said I want a rematch next Sunday, and I think I could watch those two teams play every weekend as long as I live because of how great those two teams are. I think that if they play 10 times, I think the Eagles might win even 6 or 7 of them. But I think both those teams are fantastic teams. I didn't mean to take away from Mahomes' success earlier when I said that Jalen Hurts outplayed him. I just simply meant that Hurts being able to tie the touchdown record and the rushing record, and also throwing for over 300 yards, I just thought was really impressive. And you made a good counterpoint that he also had way more opportunities. He threw the ball 38 times. He threw the ball 38 times. Like the Eagles just had a lot of extended drives in that game through the air, which is mind-boggling to me. And yet also simultaneously managed to have several significantly large chunks of or gains as well. But fantastic game. Continuing on the retiree train. I don't think there's very many people on the Chiefs. I don't know. I don't know if I'm missing anybody, but
Chad Henne retired right after the game, so
that's
he's
fair.
probably
Yeah,
the only one.
yeah. Um, I know Brandon Graham is considering retirement. I know Fletcher Cox is considering retirement. Lane Johnson, I think, is going to be back, but he is multiple times considered retirement, mostly due to injuries on his part. And he just had surgery again today on that torn groin that he played through in the Super Bowl and all of the playoffs. Um, but yeah, I do want to. I want to. It's tough for me to say because it's so fresh. But I do want to congratulate the Kansas City Chiefs. Uh, it's such a phenomenal team. I think I've never said that any of those young quarterbacks were better than Patrick Mahomes.
Nope.
If you go back and watch before the season began, we did our top 10 quarterbacks list. And the only quarterback I put ahead of Mahomes was Aaron
It's Aaron
Rodgers.
Rodgers.
And I don't want to hear it because the dude's coming off of back-to-back MVPs. And there's a lot of people like, you got that wrong. I still think Aaron Rodgers could be an MVP in a different offense. But
Well, right now
I
he's having his dark 4-day ayahuasca trip or
did that start?
whatever. Yeah, that started today.
Well, best of luck, Aaron. I hope somewhere out in the darkness you can hear my voice. I hope it actually. There were some things I hate about Aaron Rodgers, but I hope to see him come back. But that's the only person that I put ahead of Patrick Mahomes, and I think that this year for Patrick Mahomes undoubtedly was the MVP of the National Football League, in my opinion. The only quarterback. I guess I wouldn't say the only. Burrow and Allen also played phenomenally well. I think that Jalen Hurts um, is the only quarterback who ever came close to winning the award other than Mahomes, and the 2-game absence, I think, did him in. Had he played those 2 games, I think it would have been almost an even split an MVP vote between the two of them, assuming the Eagles win those games and he plays well. But the Chiefs organization is a fantastic organization. Andy Reid is an amazing head coach. He's an amazing leader of men. He's a great guy. I'm surprised at how well he handled Terry Bradshaw's shots on the stage, told him to, quote, waddle your way
Waddle.
over here. And I'm not sure about that. Andy Reid didn't seem to mind, nor did he mind the Bradshaw suggestion he go get a cheeseburger. That being said, Andy Reid, that is what he usually says he's going to do. He'll get a cheeseburger. I love Andy Reid so much. It's the one solace in this moment is just my love for him as a head coach and as a person. And Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. When he finally does retire, I fully expect him to be top 5 quarterback of all time. He might even be top 3 all time. And depending on how long he's able to keep this up, he could go down as the best quarterback in history. He does have 2 Super Bowl victories now. I think he's a lock. Even if he retired right now, I don't know that he'd be first ballot. I think he would get into the Hall of Fame eventually. But this dude's 27 years old. He's younger than either Christian or I. I think he just played his best year of his career. I've said it all season long. I think that his ability to read defenses, to take every opportunity that the defense gives him, to his pocket awareness is phenomenal. His mobility outside the pocket is phenomenal. His confidence is out of this world. I would near say that he is arrogant, borderline arrogant, but he is a National Football League quarterback. They probably all are. But the dude, I don't think he ever doubts himself. I think it doesn't matter how many points the Chiefs are trailing. I think Mahomes takes the field expecting to win the football game. Travis Kelce, after last night, I'm having a hard time saying that he's not the second best tight end of all time. I still personally think, don't worry all you Chiefs fans out there, I think Tony Gonzalez, I'd still put him number 1 for right now. But Travis Kelce's knocking on the door. 2 Kansas City Chiefs tight ends, unbelievable talent between the 2 of those guys. I would have loved to see, I say this, but Tony Gonzalez and Patrick Mahomes, I can't even imagine. That would have been phenomenal. But Travis Kelce is in a league of his own among modern-day tight ends. Rob Gronkowski is the only tight end that I've seen even come remotely close to anything that Travis Kelce has done. Other than Zach Ertz having the catch record. Still love him. But no, the Kansas City Chiefs are a great organization. I will agree with you. The linebackers for Kansas City play a phenomenal game. They hit very powerfully very early on in this game. They shut down the run lanes. They did a phenomenal job throughout the game. Nick Bolton, who went to the University of Missouri, they just played an absolutely phenomenal game. But I will say it one more time, that Super Bowl MVP, if I'm giving the award, it's to the offensive line for Kansas City. Outstanding job. I agree with you, Andrew Wiley. I don't know where you got those numbers from, but I don't doubt them one bit. Andrew Wiley played an absolutely phenomenal job, or did an absolutely phenomenal job against Hassan Reddick, who was second in the league in sacks. And after you talked about it, then I started to think, I'm like, okay, maybe the field conditions were a disadvantage for the Eagles. Because who knows if that pass rush was able to get great footing, what would have happened?
What happens, though, is when things happen to the Chiefs, like in week 1, no one says anything. But as soon as the Bills start slipping around on the Arizona field, rules are going to get changed here.
Absolutely. Maybe after the Eagles slipped around. No, I think you saw it on both teams. Like both teams are very fortunate that they didn't have a player leave with a severe injury.
Yeah.
Because of those conditions. When I saw Jake Elliott go down, I thought for sure he was going to be out for the rest of the game. Because that's a dangerous play whenever you're putting all of your weight on one foot and it buckles and slides underneath or on that slick turf. I think Super Bowl does not need to be played in Arizona again until they determine how to fix this situation. But yeah, I am not taking away from the Kansas City Chiefs victory. They fought just as hard as the Eagles did. They don't deserve to be discredited because of a controversial call that despite the call, they would have still had the lead in that game. Phenomenal job. I don't know what they said at halftime, but they came out and the Eagles, I thought, were going into halftime. I thought it was over. I'm not going to lie. The Eagles have done a fantastic job of playing with the lead this season, and I fully anticipated them winning. If only halftime Dylan had known the horrors that were to come in the second half, I was carefree. I'm watching Rihanna with her pregnant belly dancing very minorly, but singing fantastically well. And I had no concern in the world that the Eagles were going to lose that game. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe that's my fault. I'm sorry to let down my team and my teammates in the organization. But one thing I do want to say is, a lot of people hate the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not exactly sure why, because I don't think that very many people have actually met Eagles fans. I think they see a lot of things on TV. That being said, I've been to Philadelphia, and some of the things you see on TV are true. But I think the organization that is the Philadelphia Eagles is an A-class organization, from ownership down to the coaches, down to the players. I know Nick Sirianni did some unruly things, and I'd be upset if I was an opposing team's fan as well. But the dude's so emotional. Watching in the pregame, the tears in his eyes just coming down. This man loves football. A lot of people doubted him as well on his journey to becoming head coach. And after his opening press conference, that he had the stutter going, and everyone doubted him, but he's proven them wrong. And you saw Jason Kelsey crying as well. I don't know how you may hate Eagles fans, and that's perfectly fine. Even if it's me, that's perfectly fine. I don't know how you hate this organization. Don't know how you hate any player on that team. I just think they did a very classy job of handling that loss. But congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs winning their second Super Bowl in the Mahomes era. And I really hope this is the matchup again next year. I want the rematch, and if the next year's game would be half as good as this one, we'd still be in for a treat. I hope both teams come back. I want them to, as I dare say, the Sean McVay phrase that resulted in them having one of the worst records in the league this year. But let's run it back. Let's run it back, both of us. So thank you guys for listening. That is all we have for today. For all the Chiefs fans, I know a majority of the audience, I know that you are. I'm not sorry that I posted my emotional responses to the game. I am not sorry that I said it was a bad call. I'm not sorry for saying that you guys have untrained eyes. I am, however, sorry that the magical play by the Kansas City Chiefs has been disvalued due to that call. That I'm sorry about. And congratulations to all of you. I hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl. To the fans of all the other teams, better luck next year. But thanks for watching Duker Sports. We will be back in 2 days from now. So stay tuned.